Welcome back. You're still tuned in to Salam Media with myself, Salailo Makwidiri. And in a bit, we'll be hearing from Neeshan Balton, Executive Director of the Ahmed Kathrada Foundation. And we'll be addressing a few issues. And I think before that, we'll obviously be touching on Gwamanda, the former mayor of the city of Johannesburg, who has resigned yesterday. The musical chairs in the city of Johannesburg continuing. With the past, 7, 8 mayors in a space of less than 10 years. I don't remember in the city of Johannesburg if there was ever a mayor in recent memory that has finished their term, went the full 3-4 years a mayor is supposed to enjoy and finish in the city of Johannesburg, have their projects up and running, have them come to an end. It's always a chopping and changing and this crazy musical chairs. Unfortunately, saw yesterday Gwamanda be the one whose proverbial head was on the chopping block. And we'll be speaking to Neeshan Balton about the impact of the chopping and changing of mayors in the city of Johannesburg, and also some of the allegations made by the leader of Al Jamaa, who the mayor, Gwamanda, well, former mayor now, comes from that party, Al Jamaa. Well, the leader of that party, Ganief Hendricks, said there was some sinister and targeting of Gwamanda by the Ahmed Kathrada Foundation, and I will be hearing from Neeshan Balton about those allegations. He also said there's some Israeli interests that are connected to the Ahmed Kathrada Foundation, and I will be addressing all of those with Neeshan. Neeshan, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to Salam Media. Always a pleasure having you.
Good morning. Greetings to your viewers.
I think first and foremost, just your reaction to the resignation of Gwamanda. I think the Ahmed Kathrada Foundation, OUTA, and a host of other organizations have been at the forefront of those heavy criticism against the mayor, looking at the state of Johannesburg and just how much is crumbling, losing its shine and sheen as the much loved city of gold, which is not to many. Your reaction to the mayor and the chopping and changing the musical chairs in the city, what do you make of it?
No, thank you very much. I think somebody put it quite nicely this morning on social media. And he said this was the most expensive internship ever that the city has had to endure. And I think that describes it. Being an executive mayor of a city that has a budget of 80 billion rands requires a kind of skill and aptitude that I think, unfortunately, the outgoing mayor just didn't possess. And we are mindful that the issues that Joburg faces, as you correctly says, spans over a long time. But ultimately, accountability has to be called for at the person who holds the highest seat in the city, and that's the executive mayor. We've had over a year and a half, a number of community summits. Various community organizations across the length and breadth of the city have raised their issues. And what we have found is that we can't take our issues to junior officials and junior politicians. We don't seem to be getting anywhere with them. We have to take this to the highest level in the city, and that's the executive mayor, which is why we have called for accountability from him and his executive. That he has now resigned, we welcome it.
And I want to shift to some of the comments that were made by his leader, Mr. Ganief Hendricks, the leader of Al Jamaa, the party that the former mayor Gwamanda is from. He's accusing the Ahmed Kathrada Foundation of having a slandering campaign against the former mayor. He mentioned that under the tenure of Gwamanda, the city has been getting clean audits. He mentioned that there's investor confidence, talking about that 2 million loan that they got from a French bank. He said structures were in place, they've built a solid foundation, and ultimately organizations like yourselves just didn't like seeing a young black leader coming out of Soweto, being the mayor of, well, the economic hub of the continent, the economic hub of South Africa, and, mentioning you specifically, the Ahmed Kathrada Foundation, of slander. And saying you just didn't want him there. You have Israeli interests and connections, that you want to bring in people that are going to be having solid ties with the Israeli government, that you want to give business to the city of Johannesburg. And, well, you saw Gwamanda as a stumbling block to that campaign of yours. How do you respond to that?
Well, there's there is his version of events, and there's the facts. And unfortunately, the facts don't bear Mr. Hendricks out at all. So let's just take a couple of things. He talks about clean audits in the city, and that's far from the truth. The city doesn't have clean audits. It has had unqualified audits with very significant findings. And I would urge you and others to go and read the Municipal Public Accounts Committee's reports to council and look at the scathing reports of the Auditor General, in which they are saying that the city's finances is just not being handled properly. It has had the highest rates of irregular and fruitless expenditure. The city only spent, and one example that Mr. Hendricks uses is to say that the city got an award from Salga for some good performance. What he doesn't say is that the city got this recognition from Salga for having spent 85% of a government grant. The 15% that was not spent amounts to 714 million rands, which it would now have to give back to National Treasury. Money that was needed to have been spent on infrastructure in the city was not spent. So I think it's a huge distortion of the truth. As for the loan that the city got from a French development agency, we need to ask, is that a sign of investor confidence that no national financial institution wanted to do that for the city? And it requires having to go to a French development institution for this kind of bailout. The 2.6 billion rands, in fact, was needed to fund current operating expenditure in the city. The city had already incurred 1 billion rand of expenditure from that 2.6 million before they even had it. Now, that's not prudent financial management under any circumstances. As for all of his other crazy claims about us being Zionists and having links with whoever it is that in his dream world we have, he needs to provide the proof of that. And we have reserved our rights to deal with that issue and to demand the proof of him, either through some kind of public apology on his behalf, or he's going to have to back it up legally. But those are options that we will explore.
Are you steadily looking at those options? Are you looking to sue Mr. Ganief Hendricks?
Well, not suing, but we're looking at what are the legal possibilities that we have for these kinds of slanderous remarks.
Okay. Moving on from that, obviously, with Gwamanda now having resigned, there are, candidates that are popping up. One of those, which he looks to be a front runner, to being the new mayor of the city of Johannesburg, is Dada Morero. Are you guys happy to see him as the front runner? Do you see him as the person that could potentially take the city forward? And also your comment on the musical chairs that has been playing out in the city of Johannesburg, the chopping and changing of mayors. It's one that I think a lot of people are looking at and feeling a bit uneasy, because there hasn't been a mayor in recent memory that has finished their full term and had projects in place and ultimately saw them to completion.
Well, let's deal with your second issue first. I think it's unfortunate that the city is now going into its ninth mayor, I think, in the last 8 years or so.
Yeah.
And that certainly um, intensifies the instability. Our call has always been to have a government in the city that is stable, but that is also competent and capable of doing what is required. We hope that this change of mayor this time around, and it will be for a very short period, the 2026 elections is very much around the corner. And in this short period of time, there will be a degree of stability as well as an ability to deal with many of the issues that the Auditor General's report have outlined, and including the reports of the Public Accounts Committee in Johannesburg. Uh, and the lastly would be for a mayor and a mayoral committee that listens to the people of the city, not like this outgoing mayor that called people who have had problems with the electricity surcharge, calling them stooges, not addressing the issue, but thinking that just appending some idiotic label to them would make the issue go away. So we need a government that will understand that, firstly, this is a city in crisis. And having seen bits of the ANC's press conference, I am concerned that they are starting off on the basis that the city is performing well. All the evidence indicates that it is not doing that well. So, firstly, is acknowledging that there is a crisis, beginning to unpack which of those crisis issues needs to be addressed urgently, and which of them they have resources for. And lastly, would be developing a long term vision for this city that includes the citizens of the city in a meaningful way, so that by the time we get to 2026 elections, there is a clear plan for the city up to 2031. These are, I think, the minimum requirements. We don't have a preference for who leads the city. We are mindful that none of us have been elected to participate in that process. That's the prerogative of the political parties who are in council, and they have to deal with it. We hope that they will identify the most competent and capable person to lead the city. And if that is Dada Marrero, that would be their choice. We will, however, ensure that whoever is the executive mayor, we hold him or her to account for what they are responsible for.
We're going to leave it there. Neeshan, thank you so much for giving us your time. Really, really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Well, there you have it there. Neeshan Balton coming to, kind of respond to some of those allegations made by Ganief Hendricks, the leader of Al Jama, who accused them of having a slandering campaign against the outgoing mayor, Gwamanda, and also having links to Israeli interests. Well, you heard it right here on Salam Media that, the Ahmed Kathrada Foundation will be looking at some of the avenues, to make sure that Ganief Hendricks does account or provide some kind of proof to the allegations that he's making on them, and this campaign that he speaks of that deliberately wants to see Gwamanda resign, which ultimately he did yesterday. So it's going to be interesting times ahead. The ANC has put forward the name of Dada Marrero, who I think will be coming in for his second stint as the executive mayor of the city of Johannesburg. So it's going to be interesting to see if he'll be the incoming leader to lead the city of Johannesburg. Are you a citizen of Joburg? If you are, I think you can give us a call, 011-680-0355, or send us a WhatsApp, 061-766-0355. What did you make of the 16 months of Gwamanda as the mayor of Johannesburg? Were you happy with how he ran the city? His leadership skills, obviously, taking over from Thapelo Ahmed, who also served a really short stint as the mayor of the city of Johannesburg. Both leaders coming out of Al Jama now seemingly being pushed to the side by the ANC. And I think, if there's one person who really came out strong against Kabelo Gwamanda was obviously Action SA leader Herman Mashaba, who I think in a lot of ways the resignation of Kabelo Gwamanda can be attributed to him, and this newly found love that Action SA and the ANC seem to have found for each other. So it's going to be really interesting times ahead. But I think at the end, with all that's being said and done, Joburg needs to be rebuilt. The city of Joburg needs to be a world-class African city, because it's no longer that. It's no longer the city of gold. If you can just go to the CBD, for instance, you'd swear you are in a war-torn, country. I think it's a mess. It's scary, and it doesn't resemble anything that I think our parents and our grandparents used to tell us about Joburg back in the day. Hillbrow and what that looked like back in the day, and some other parts of the city. It's a shell of itself. To say the least. So whoever's going to be the mayor, don't really care if it's Dada Morero, it's Herman Mashaba, or it's anyone. They need to understand, as Neeshan Balton said, that before everything else, they need to appreciate the fact that the city of Johannesburg is a city in crisis. So we're going to leave it here for now, but you're sure going to be getting the latest when it comes to the city of Johannesburg and its leadership from us here on Salam Media. It's a story that we'll be following closely because, well, we're headquartered right here. We're citizens of the city ourselves. So we're going to be looking at that with a very, very, keen interest. But we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, moving away from the city of Johannesburg, we'll now be heading nationally to focus on, I think, a very, very pressing national issue, the issue of unemployment rather, where Stats SA has come out with a quarterly labor force survey that the official unemployment rate has surged to 33.5%, marking a worrying increase from the previous quarter. Even more concerning is the expanded unemployment rate, which has risen to 42.6%. So almost half of South Africans being unemployed. And we'll be looking at that with the Secretariat of Direct Selling Association of South Africa, Imtiaz Ibrahim, about the impact and the implications of unemployment, particularly on the youth. And if there are any kind of solutions, if this new GNU has a plan on how we can solve the unemployment crisis that we've been grappling with in the country for ages. So we'll be talking to Imtiaz Ibrahim right after this short break.